Jarred Kelenic remains red hot at the dish, and Marco Gonzalez steps up once again as the Mariners beat the Phillies. Their thoughts on the series opening victory coming up here on the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners postgame show. It's sticking around, buddy. Can't do anything about it. This episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/MLB60 and use promo code MLB60 for 60% off plus free shipping. Thank you so much for making us your first listen after the Mariners win. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon by scanning the QR code right above my head. The link, as well as our social accounts, is also in the description of this episode. 5-3, the final from Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia, PA. Mariners beat the Phillies on the back of another big game from Jarred Kelenic, a 2-run blast from Teoscar Hernandez, and another strong start from Marco Gonzalez. Now, Colby, before we get into the game, what's going on with your lighting situation over there, man? You're like a giant ball of white light right now.
I mean, yeah. I don't know.
It's a little bit better. It was crazy before we hit record. Now it's getting a little bad again, but
I don't know, man. Like I said, I have an east-facing window right in front of me, so the lighting's not great. And this time of day, the little ring light doesn't really seem to help much. So, see, looks better.
It chilled out for a second there. Well, you're obviously glowing because the Mariners had a really nice game tonight against the Phillies, right? Jarred Kelenic goes 3 for 4 in this game. He was, for a while there, the only Mariners hitter that seemed to have figured out Bailey Falter. He gets the Mariners' first hit of the game with a double, hustle double, into left center field, and then gets their second hit of the game, his next time through the order, with a nuke to right center field on a little bit of a cookie there from Falter, taking advantage of that to give the Mariners a 1-0 lead. He also followed that up with another impressive looking drive to left center field, but Christian Pache caught that ball. A nice little diving catch by Pache. And then finally flipped a single, opposite field single against another lefty into left field for his third hit of the game. And he now holds the American League lead in WRC plus with a mark of 210. So let's talk about Kelenic first. What did you see out of Kelenic tonight?
Not one of his better games. It's
no. I mean, he didn't hit a ball 482 feet. So
that's true. It was only 424. You know, but it was interesting to see the double off of the lefty. And then the single off of the lefty. So clearly, the minor league splits that we brought up a few weeks ago, they seem to be more of an indicator than, the major league track record against lefties, which, as you pointed out, well, they're kind of tough to discern because Kelenic's bad against everybody, or he was bad against everybody. So it certainly looks like Kelenic is not a platoon player. He looks like an everyday bat. He's not going to torch lefties like he has so far this year. Obviously not. He's also not going to torch righties as bad as he has this year. There's going to be a slowdown period at some point, but right now he's just dialed in. He's not missing, he's not missing really cookies essentially. The home run he hit was just kind of a, hanging slider in the middle of the plate, and he did what you should do with it. And he's just in a really good spot right now. We see him go to left field a couple times today, left center field. He's running well. He's not chasing. He continues to hit the ball hard. And again, we talked about yesterday, Kelenic is even when he's not having these monster games like he did today, he's finding a way to sacrifice fly, draw a walk, get a RBI single. Like he's mixing in all these little tiny like bonus performances, and then he'll have this big explosive game like he did today. Today it was all against lefties too. So that is again pretty exciting to see. Kelenic dialed in right now. It's interesting. The calls for him to be moved up in the lineup are only going to get louder. And it's you're getting to a point now where it's tough to ignore what he's doing right now. It's tough to kind of like try and dampen down the expectations going forward because Kelenic right now has a really good shot to win the American League Player of the Month.
That's what I was going to say, right? He's
Yeah.
been statistically the most productive player in the American League and was tied for the league lead, Major League Baseball lead in WRC Plus halfway through this game with Brandon Marsh going 0 for 2 to start the game. Marsh ended up getting a single, and that put him up to 213. Kelenic finishes the night, as I said, at a mark of 210. Matt Chapman went 1 for 4 tonight. That dropped him down to 205. So Kelenic right now has a 5-point lead in the American League in WRC Plus. And again, he's definitely a strong favorite for American League Player of the Month. There's still 5 more games left in the month, but he is trying to finish this thing out pretty strong here. And
Right.
hopefully he gets himself some hardware because he has earned it.
Do they get trophies for that?
I think they do.
Okay. I mean, YouTube Player of the Game is like on another level.
Yeah. If
mean,
YouTube has a Player of the Game award, they should have a Player of the Month award, like an actual physical Player of the Month award.
Sure, I'm sure Red Sox fans are screaming Devers. Not that any Red Sox fans are listening to us right now, but yeah, Kelenic's certainly in that conversation, and we're going on 80 plate appearances now after today. 80. I don't know if this is counting today or not yet.
Yeah.
But we're closing on that 100 mark, and for me, about 150 is a trend rather than a streak or anything like that. So it's about halfway there. And again, he's right now, I think he's hitting 342. Like he's not going to hit 342, I think. But he's been very, very good, and it just continues. And he just keeps on stacking performances like this on top of each other. He's got to be feeling really good right now. And if you're the Mariners, like this is the dream scenario because you haven't even really gotten Julio going yet. And if you have because right now Kelenic, again, it's 24 games in, 23 games in right now. He is in the most valuable player conversation.
Yeah.
If the season ended today, which we know it doesn't. But
again, by WRC Plus standards, he is statistically the best hitter in the American League right now.
And he's a really good outfielder too. So, and he can steal some bases. He's on pace to steal like 15, 20 bags. So, yeah, Kelenic's been amazing. And it's always, I mean, you kind of stop what you're doing now when Jarred Kelenic comes to the plate. You're like, let's watch this because there'll be something interesting that happens every time he goes up to the plate.
Well, and some days, even tonight before the rest of the offense kind of got going, it just kind of felt like it's felt a lot like it's just been Jarred and then whatever else you can get. You cross your fingers and hope to get something out of this offense outside of Jarred. He's been the driving force of this. He's been inarguably the Mariners' best hitter through the start of the season so far. And it's not particularly because anything has gone super wrong. I mean, there's been some relatively disappointing starts for some guys like Julio, like Teoscar, but those guys have also had some productive outings as well. So it's just an example of how good Jarred Kelenic has really been at the end of the day. He's been an absolute monster at the dish. One of the best hitters in all of baseball, and the stuff that he's doing right now is ridiculous. He is so locked in. Even that little single that he had on a pitch on the outside corner of the plate, I think, flipping that out to a single. Again, he's not doing too much. He's not trying to do too much, and he's letting the power just naturally come to him. He's getting those cookies. He's drawing out at bats. His K rate is starting to go down further and further and further as we go along here. He's drawing out more at bats, and he's just waiting for those cookies to come from him, and he's doing damage with them. And when he doesn't get one of those, he's still able to find a way on base, and that's incredible growth from a guy that was statistically one of the worst hitters in all of Major League Baseball for the last year and a half.
Yeah. With his, 0 strikeout performance today and 4 plate appearances, his strikeout rate should be down around league average right now. And remember, about a week into the season, even though Kelenic was still off to a pretty good start at that point, it was at 50%. So it's continuing to go down, and he just doesn't look like a guy who is going to be prone to, strikeouts. He's not Joey Gallo, right? He's not one of these big K guys. He doesn't look like it. He looks like a guy who's probably going to be around league average. When you combine that with his power and, his on base skills. He's drawing walks, plenty of walks, and it's just, again, we're talking about he has been so far this year a superstar,
Yeah.
and the only reason we're sitting here really saying like this isn't sustainable is because it's baseball. It shouldn't be. Nobody is this good for an entire year.
Yeah, it's not sustainable because it's too good, right?
Right. Like this is Mike Trout stuff right now.
Yeah.
That Jared, are we really going to say that Jarred Kelenic is as good as Mike Trout? No, because he's better. But yeah, that's just what we're at with Jarred Kelenic.
It's just wild because like you never see someone go again from one of the worst hitters in all of baseball to this, to absolutely like 100th percentile elite, right?
Yep.
And again, it's very early in the season, right? That works both ways, both with disappointing starts and really hot starts like we're seeing out of Kelenic. Still very early. Things can change rather quickly. The outlook of him overall can change rather quickly, but he's showing no signs of slowing down right now. The process is so good, and we've seen the league adjust to him a little bit. We've seen pitchers adjust to him a little bit. They're throwing more breaking balls, and he's adjusting right back, and he's still finding success, right? Mm-hmm. Again, he did damage against breaking balls against lefties tonight. That's really, really, like, that's incredibly noteworthy.
Ty, think about all the players who might be available at the trade deadline this year. Mm-hmm. Every single player who might be traded. Would you trade Jarred Kelenic for any of them?
Nope.
There you go. If I asked you that a month ago, you would have handed me a list of guys like, yep, here. A month later, you're like, no, I'm going to ride this out.
Well, like real quick, and we need to go to our ad break, but real quick, today Brian Reynolds signed his extension finally with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Obviously, we talked about Reynolds a lot. We talked about trading Kelenic as kind of just a throw-in a Reynolds deal as well. And, I really wanted to say today that a month ago, that news of Brian Reynolds signing an extension would be kind of heartbreaking. Now, I couldn't care less.
It's like, whatever.
We have
Brian Reynolds at home,
and he's better right now.
He's better, yeah.
Right, like it's pretty incredible to see what Kelenic has done over the first 23 games here. I don't know how many he's actually played in, but let's just say 23 for the sake of it. He's been fantastic. I mean, he's been MVP caliber. He should be very well at the top of the conversation here for AL Player of the Month. We'll see how the next 5 games go. He needs to finish it out strong because, like you said, there's guys like Rafael Devers who are also very deserving. But man, what a night for Jarred Kelenic. Again, 3 for 4 with a double, a home run, and a single in the Mariners' 5-3 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. And Colby, I think we're getting close, even with Julio's ups and downs and the Teo digging himself out of the hole that he created at the start of the season. I think we're getting close to having a legitimate conversation about this team having the best outfield in all of baseball. So let's talk about that a little bit more here in just a moment. But real quick, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by So Rare. Our new sponsor, So Rare, is a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 Major League Baseball teams. Unlike other fantasy baseball platforms, So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or lose, you still own your cards and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more you win, the more you advance, collecting increasingly powerful cards and accessing next level competitions and rewards like MLB Game Weeks. MLB Game Weeks happen twice weekly and span a 3 to 4 day cycle. At the end of game weeks, So Rare MLB managers who rank at or near the top of their leaderboards win a variety of rewards, which can include So Rare scarcity cards, game tickets, merchandise, signed jerseys, and VIP experiences like meeting MLB stars, just like Seattle Mariners center fielder Julio Rodriguez. Prizes may vary depending on the competition. Head to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show following the Mariners 5-3 victory over the Philadelphia Phillies. And again, we're doing post-game shows every single day for this series. So we're going to do one tomorrow. We're going to do one on Thursday afternoon as well after that game. And you can catch those games on Sirius XM with the Mariners hometown broadcast via the SXM app. Now, folks, people are hungry, and we are looking to give them some meals. We are nearing $7,000 donated to our Feeding America fundraiser. We only got a few days left, but I have to give a special shout out to Grand Slam Graham, who came through with a $469.69 donation. What was it, last night, this morning, something like that? Incredibly kind gesture from Graham. And if you want to help out, just head on over to the link that we have in the description of this episode, whether you're watching or listening to this episode, or scan the QR code that's right below our faces, and it'll take you right to our donation page. If you've already donated, or if you don't have the means to donate, a subscription to our YouTube channel is just as good as a donation. We're donating one meal per subscription that we get between the time of starting this fundraiser and the end of it, which is on Monday. And we're going to tally that all up and make that final donation on Monday as well. So we'll reconvene then and talk about what we've all added up here for Feeding America. Great cause that is helping get some meals to a lot of folks in need. And we are nearing 70,000 meals donated right now. Pretty incredible stuff. So thank you guys so much for the response. Now, Colby, like I said, this outfield is shaping up to be, with the way that Kelenic is playing, Teo's starting to turn things around, and we know that Julio is eventually going to turn things around. This outfield is starting to take shape as probably the best in Major League Baseball. We talked about, a few weeks ago, I think we had a question about the upper echelon of outfields in Major League Baseball, and we talked about how really every outfield out there in Major League Baseball is kind of incomplete. Like, they have two really good guys and then one question mark, and the Mariners were certainly one of those teams heading into this year with a big question mark, obviously being Kelenic. Now Kelenic is solidifying himself, at least through the first 23 games here, as a star. Finally we're seeing this out of Jarred Kelenic. So what do you think? Do you think that's actually the ceiling now for this team? Do you think maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, or does this Mariners team actually have one of the best outfield groups in all of baseball?
It is the greatest outfield of all time.
Wow.
Yeah. So take that. I don't even know who would be considered. Probably one that had Barry Bonds in it, and the other two really didn't matter. But what's really nice about this outfield right now, and again, we still haven't seen Julio really get it going. We've seen glimpses here and there, but he's still kind of trying to put it together. Teo is just over the last, well, honestly, it's been the last like 2 or 3 weeks. It's Teo was really bad for the first like 5 or 6 games, and since then he's been just great. So what I like about this outfield, though, they can all run.
Mm-hmm.
They all have cannons for arms.
Yep.
And right now they're all really, really good defensively. And it seems weird to say because Teo's missed a play here and there. But when you go and you look at the metrics, he's still the second or third best defensive right fielder in all of baseball right now. Again, it's very early. Defensive metrics, even season-long defensive metrics, are still pretty small sample size. Typically, you want a couple years of sample size on defensive metrics, but
and defensive metrics are just never going to be perfected.
No.
Yeah.
No. So you have to look at it from your eye a little bit. And Teo has been better than I think most of us would have thought in right field. Kelenic certainly is every bit what we thought he was going to be in a corner, and Julio continues to be. I don't think he's a Gold Glover out there, but he's definitely not a liability. He's an asset, if anything, in center field. So you kind of combine those three guys. They all have tremendous power. They have excellent arms, accurate arms. And they have very just good raw athleticism too. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of upside here, like we talked about a few weeks ago. But if Kelenic is going to hit like 75% of what he has so far, even, then the Mariners are definitely right there, because you do look at other outfields and you say, well, what other outfield could possibly compete with this? Toronto has Kevin Kiermaier, who can't really hit. So
Varsho's kind of gotten off to a slow start as well. Oh.
Right. So, yeah, I just think that there's not a lot of outfields that are going to compete. Certainly, 3 deep. Now, the Mariners have some depth issues in their outfield right now that could be alleviated by Taylor Trammell. We'll see. But right now, it would be a struggle to say that there's an outfield that you would take over the Mariners right now, not just even long term, just for the 2023 season.
Right, and there's so much upside still, right? Because obviously there's going to be some regression from Kelenic naturally. He's not going to keep this kind of level of production up, like we said. But there's also going to be, on the flip side of that, some positive regression from Julio, who had another rough night tonight at the plate, just wasn't able to catch up to really anything, missed on a couple of curveballs, pretty bad, struck out a couple times tonight. But that said, Julio's still in a much better spot this April than he was last April. I posted the numbers over on my Twitter. He's like 30 points higher in WRC plus. He's got, a few more home runs, a couple more ribs. He's striking out significantly less, like 11% less than he was last year. So Julio's going to be fine. And again, like if he has, the May through October that he had last year, he's a top 3 MVP candidate.
Yeah,
with what he's done this April. Maybe the Mariners have 2 MVP candidates in that outfield right now.
I mean, Marco's pretty good, but I don't know if I would say MVP candidate yet.
We gotta see Marco play some outfield, right? He's the ball shagger god out there during BP.
Ty, serious question. I know you're going to answer it, but I got to ask it anyways.
Okay.
Game on the line. You have to pinch hit. Are you pinch hitting Tommy La Stella or Marco Gonzalez?
Marco.
Yeah, that's not even a doubt in my mind.
Marco rakes.
He did in college. I think he's got a double too.
Or hey, Justice Sheffield. Call up Justice Sheffield quick,
Marco's already here, so
I'd rather have Justice Sheffield hitting for me than Tommy La Stella. You heard me.
I don't think that's that bold of a statement. I think everybody in the comments would probably agree.
Didn't Justin Dunn also hit like a double in San Diego or something like that?
I think Dunn and Sheffield, they back-to-back games, they each had a double.
By the way, super off topic here, but Justin Dunn reminded me, did you see what the Reds did to the Rangers tonight?
No.
Rangers were up 6-0. Reds came back and won 7-6.
I thought they did that last night.
No, they did that tonight.
Oh, wow.
Maybe they did it last night as well. I don't know. But like
they won 7-6.
They won 7-6 tonight.
Yeah.
Being down 6-0. That was crazy.
Yeah, Reds are off to a nice little start, and the Rangers, by the way, have played a huge percentage of their games against Oakland and Kansas City. So they're going to fall back to the pack too. The AL West is going to be very competitive this year.
All right, so let's talk more about Marco Gonzalez, who had another really nice start in his second start post birth of his second child. Dad strength, baby. It's undefeated. Real quick, though, before we get into that, a reminder, this episode of Locked On Mariners is brought to you by FanDuel. Grand slams, no hitters, and double plays are back, and there's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to home runs, strikeouts, and stolen bases. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners postgame show. Thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 5-3 win over the Philadelphia Phillies. And again, we will be doing 2 more postgame shows for this series. So catch us again tomorrow night, and you can catch the game on the Mariners hometown broadcast tomorrow night with SiriusXM via the SXM app. So Marco Gonzalez on short notice, full 5 days rest, but still on short notice because Logan Gilbert felt a little something in his shoulder while lifting. So as a precaution, they're pushing his start back to tomorrow. So they bring Gonzalez's start up a day, and he goes 5 innings. Only 75 pitches thrown. We'll talk a little bit about the decision to take him out, despite being on 5 days rest. But another really solid start from Marco against the Phillies. Only gives up the 1 run, solo home run to Edmundo Sosa that was cranked. But outside of that, didn't really make too many mistakes. Kind of had to battle in the 3rd inning, but got through it. Got a nice strikeout of Trey Turner, who was rough tonight at the plate. I'm sure that's going to last this whole series. But it was nice to see that Turner didn't really do any damage. Top of the Phillies order in general didn't really do a ton of damage tonight. And again, that was a big thanks in large part to Marco. So what did you see out of Marco tonight, Colby?
Yeah, it's pretty efficient. Got through 5 on 75 pitches. He only allowed 4 hard hit balls. So, just 2 strikeouts. He wasn't the repeat of the big 9 strikeout performance he had last time out, which we know is always going to be an outlier for Marco. But again, one of the trends we saw going back to his last few starts is he's really ditched the cutter. He's not throwing it really at all right now. Today he threw 5 by StatCast, which accounts for 7% of his pitches. It was curveball heavy today, which is a nice little twist. His last outing, Marco was very change-up fastball heavy. Today it was the curveball that did most of the heavy lifting. And then actually his second most used pitch was the changeup. So he really committed to keeping guys, off on, keep getting guys on there to their front foot. 66% of the pitches he threw today, 2/3 were off speed pitches, curveballs and changeups. So, it's pretty interesting. He only had 3 whiffs all game. They were all on the changeup, but he did get 15 called strikes on that pitch, and there wasn't a lot to square up. Marco was on the corners. We saw him not afraid to get into 3-1 counts and throw a pitch just above the zone. And if it's ball 4, it's ball 4, whatever. But chances are on a 3-1 count, that guy's going to be aggressive and swing at it. And we saw him do that a couple times. So this kind of is 3 in a row now for Marco, 4 in a row for Marco, where we've seen him essentially ditch the cutter. He's not going to use it hardly at all anymore, which is good because it's not a good pitch. And he is really committing to the changeup and the curveball and just kind of, being the crafty lefty that everybody thought he was. And he's just really committed to it. He's pounding the strike zone right now. So it's great to see because, Marco, again, with the struggles of Chris Flexen and Robbie Ray on the IL, you kind of couldn't have 2 black holes in your rotation this early in the year. And Marco, after, kind of a rough start, has been anything but. He's been very solid this year. And I think you feel pretty good about him, going out there, and he's still going to have a blow up start at some point this year. I mean, it maybe multiple. There's going to be some days where his changeup just doesn't have command and it kind of floats in the middle of the plate and it gets hit hard. But right now, this is the best command we've seen from Marco since that 2020 season. And it's gone on about 3 starts now. Marco is starting to get to a point where you kind of trust him enough that you don't feel like you have to rush any of the young arms that we assumed would be up by May. Right now, there's really no reason to call those guys up for Marco. Maybe there is for Chris Flexen, but Marco's been great the last few times out, and today was just kind of classic soft tossing, right-handed heavy lineup. We're going to get we're going to get you out on your front foot. We're going to get you to roll over. We're not going to be in the middle of the plate. You're going to have to earn your runs, and Philadelphia couldn't. And again, it's a pretty good Phillies lineup. And Marco just kind of toyed with them all day and really did it. It was kind of vintage Jamie Moyer, a comp that both Mariners and Phillies fans should be well aware of.
He had to do something, right? Because he was nearing the end of his rope in Seattle. Yeah. He had to make some sort of tweak. He had to do something here to essentially stay alive in this rotation because, in another universe, he might be making this start for the Phillies tonight, right? The Mariners were pretty close, apparently, according to Ryan Divish, to trading Marco to Philadelphia in a 3-team deal that would have brought Joey Gallo from New York to Seattle. The Yankees, of course, would have been that 3rd team involved. But Marco survived the trade deadline. Marco survived the offseason, and he's still in Seattle, and it's paying dividends right now for the Mariners in a pretty tight spot right now with Robbie Ray on the IL. By the way, he met with team doctors today, and they're going to determine if he can start throwing. If so, he'll go down to Arizona and start ramping that back up. So that's hopefully some good news on Robbie Ray. But with Robbie Ray on the IL, and then Chris Flexen pitching the way that he unfortunately is right now, the Mariners need Marco to do what Marco is doing right now, and he's stepped up and then some. He's been one of their better starting pitchers. He's one of the reasons why they are tops in the league right now in F4. So now let's talk about, of course, the decision to take him out after 75 pitches, 5 innings pitched. I get it from the perspective of maybe not letting him face Turner, Schwarber, Castellanos again for the third time, but going to Matt Brash in that situation, with the way that Brash has been throwing the ball lately, and it almost came back to bite them in a pretty big way. Brash nearly gave this game back to the Phillies. He survived, only giving up one run, thankfully, but he allowed bases to get loaded with one out. Hit Schwarber on the foot with a curveball, I think, maybe a slider, and then give up back-to-back singles. Some couple of good defensive plays, though. Were able to get Brash out of there. But yeah, I get the idea of taking him out before facing the top of the order a third time, but going to Brash in that situation, no bueno for me.
For me, Marco's handled at least Turner and Schwarber all night, and again, with a 4-1 lead, you kind of have the ability to be like, all right, go out. Like Scott really loves to give guys clean innings. He loves to get his relievers in, nobody on, nobody out, just to start the inning. But sometimes you just have to say that's not enough. And asking Matt Brash to get 3 outs instead of 1 is a pretty big difference right now, even with a 3-run lead. So for me, the ideal scenario was you send Marco out there, and if somebody gets on, then you can go to Brash, fine, whatever. Because now, the strikeout is a little bit more important. But Marco was cruising at that point. He had a pretty long third, but other than that, he was getting guys out quick, and he was working really quickly. So I like the tempo. So wasn't a big fan of that. And Marco, again, on full rest, so there's no reason to worry about his pitch count. But if you don't want him to face the order a third time, for me right now, that's probably where I'm using God or Topa. Now Topa came in and pitched the 8th to the middle of the order, so it was middle, right?
Yeah. He
it was middle.
faced. Did he face Turner?
I don't think so.
Can't remember.
Either way,
help us out here.
no,
Help us out. Oh no. He pitched the 8th. He pitched the 8th, right? Yeah. Topa
Spire
pitched the
struck
8th.
out Turner in the 7th.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So he faced the middle of the order. Yeah. Okay.
So, wouldn't be necessary. Brash did his job, but whatever. It is what it is. So, yeah, it was just kind of a weird decision. Again, thankfully it didn't backfire. Ty France showed up today with the glove to make a couple really nice plays, including, what might have been a game saving, because that ball gets by him. That's a double, and two more runs are scoring at least. So you're probably talking about all of a sudden at least a 4-3 game, probably a tie game. So yeah, I didn't love that decision by Scott. If Brash was throwing the ball really well right now, then I would totally get it. But I think you got to let Marco go out there and give him a batter or two.
Yeah, I also
especially
think,
with a 3-run lead.
Well, I also think from a Brash perspective, if you're trying to get his confidence back, why are you doing it against the 2, 3, 4 in the Phillies order? Yeah. Right? Why not do that when you get to the 7th? Right? Why not deploy Spire or Topa in that situation, and then have Brash take the 7th, where he's going to face, Baum, Sosa, Marsh, or Real Muto, Baum, Sosa. I feel like that would have been a more beneficial spot for Brash to come in, both for himself and for the Mariners. But I digress. At the end of the day, it worked out. Still don't agree with the process, but it did work out. So not going to harp on it too much. Real quick though, so Trey Turner went 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Jose Caballero and JP Crawford combined went 2 for 6 with a couple ribs, couple walks, couple stolen bases.
Chills.
Dipoto did it again.
That's all we were going to say. By the way, shout out to the entire bottom half of the order. The top half, the top 3 guys, they went 1 for 12 with 5 strikeouts today. 6 through 9 managed to go, let's see here, 6 for 14 today. They had, let's see, 9 hard hit balls between them in this game. They stole a couple bases. They drew a couple walks. Kelenic hit the big home run. So the Mariners, found a way to put up 5 without much contribution whatsoever from Julio, Ty France, or AJ Pollock. Teo got the big 2-run homer, and Gino did chip in a double. But yeah, kudos to the bottom of the lineup tonight. And, despite some questionable decisions, big kudos to the Mariners pitching staff, because The Phillies offense right now is kind of clicking. You look at these numbers, and there's a lot of guys putting up really good numbers in this lineup early in the year, and the Mariners just kind of handled them. It never really felt like this game was gonna get away from them, aside from the brash inning. But no, it's a really good job from the bottom of the order, and the pitching staff in general, and that's a really good win. To you always want to win the first one in a series. It gives you a little bit of wiggle room in game two to set up game three if you need it. And with the tough series coming up in Toronto, it'd be very nice to take this series, which you can do by just splitting the next two.
And folks, if you feel insecure about how you're doing at your job, just watch Laz Diaz call balls and strikes for 9 innings. You'll feel a lot better. I promise you.
Oh, darn. I forgot to say spoiler alert at the top in case you guys haven't watched the game yet.
Oops.
Darn.
All right, Sailors. That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. You love it. Just admit it. You love it. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Well, the people said they wanted it, right? We got some great feedback in the comments. We obviously, I mean, it was a couple of folks' idea in our live stream on Friday. You just want me to get to the wrap because you don't want me to prove you wrong here. You don't want me to make you look.
I don't want us to go 42 minutes again, and I know you have a tendency to kind of drone on forever. So
for Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at _Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, SDANEGNZLZ, and Colby over at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen after the Mariners 5-3 win over the Philadelphia Phillies. We'll be back tomorrow night after the game, and you can catch that game on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. But for now, have yourself a beautiful baseball evening, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Peace.